Have you ever looked at professional codes of conduct and thought, yeah, I should probably know this properly? So in this video, I want to break down the 11 rules of Landscape Institute Code of Practice in a much more practical way. Not in the legal sounding way, not in like a robotic way, but in a way that actually makes sense in real landscape practice. Because being a good landscape professional is not just about producing nice drawings, good visuals, or a strong planting plan. It's also about how you operate professionally. So let's go through all 11 rules and translate them into real world practice. A code of practice is not there just to make life harder. It's there because landscape work affects real places. It affects real people, real budgets, real ecosystems, and real safety. What we design can affect biodiversity, accessibility, maintenance, long-term cost, climate resilience, and the overall quality of people's life. So if you understand these rules properly, they do not restrict you. They actually make you a stronger designer and a more reliable professional. So, rule number 1. The first rule is about promoting sustainable development and using resources responsibly. And in simple terms, that means do not design something that looks good today, but it creates problems tomorrow. In landscape practice, that could affect material choices, water use, drainage, planting, maintenance, carbon impact, habit value, and of course, long-term resilience. So sustainability is not just about adding more planting and just say, it's great. It's about making better decisions. Decisions that balance aesthetics, functionality, ecology, durability, and the most important, a long-term performance. So for me, this is a big reminder that landscape design is just not a decoration, it's a system thinking. Let's go for rule number 2, the second rule. The second rule is about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And this one is really important because landscapes are used by everybody. It's like including everyone, everybody. So good landscape design should think seriously about access, about comfort, about safety, about visibility, and of course inclusivity. That is the key thing, and where people genuinely feel welcome. In a space, that could mean accessible routes, better seating, safer circulation, more inclusive play areas, or simply designing spaces that do not feel unintentionally excluded for some people. And this rule is not only about the spaces that we design, it's also about how we work with colleagues, how we work with clients, how we work with consultants, and of course how we include all the public, because professional behavior matters too. And let's go for rule number 3, the third rule. The third rule is about upholding the reputation and dignity of the profession. That sounds a bit formal, but it's really quite simple. Your behavior reflects landscape architecture as a whole entity, as a whole thing. That includes how you communicate, how reliable you are, how honest you are, how are your ethics, how well you present your work, and whether people can trust you. If someone is careless, if someone is misleading or just unprofessional, it does not just affect them, it affects confidence to the profession. It affects more widely how people perceive landscape architecture. So every time we act clearly, professional, and responsible with reasonable care, we help to strengthen this discipline. Let's go for rule number 4. The rule number 4 is about managing your business properly, and in line with legal requirements, of course. And this applies whether you run your own studio, if you work as a freelancer, if you work just as a consultant, or if you work inside a company. Because being good at design is not enough if the business or the way you work is chaotic. This means that you should have proper records, clear appointments, protect the data, sensible scope, sensible contracts, that you manage the information well, that you have a good financial management in your practice, and overall the legal compliance that you need. A poorly managed business can create risk quickly, and that risk can spread, mislead things, make things unclear, produce weak documentation, and of course, poor communication as well. So all of this damages projects, and this rule is saying that professional practice needs structure, not just talent. If you're a good designer, but you cannot keep your workplace tidy, it's not working. The fifth rule is about having appropriate professional indemnity insurance. This one is very straightforward, but also one of the most important ones, because landscape advice and design decisions can have real consequences. And if something goes wrong, that protection matters. The key point here is that your insurance needs to match the services that you actually can provide. This is not just box-ticking exercise, it's part of being a properly responsible professional. And let's go to rule number 6. Rule 6 is a big one. Only provide services that you are competent to deliver in an honest way. This is about knowing both your strengths and your limits as well. It really doesn't mean that you can never grow and learn new things. It does not mean that you cannot move into new areas or explore things, but it does mean that you cannot pretend to have expertise that you don't have. So, if something is outside of your competence, the professional response that you should do is, I can't do that. It's okay to bring support from third parties and to be guided, but the most important thing is to know where your limits are, because knowing where your limits are is not weakness, it's professionalism. Because one of the most dangerous things in practice is false confidence. And once something is built, mistakes become very real. So let's go for rule number 7. The 7th rule is about CPD. So CPD stands for Continuing Professional Development. And to me, this is one of the most positive rules on the list, because practice keeps changing, materials are always changing, guidance changes, the software changes, computer changes, AI is now here, policy changes, climate change expectations, public expectations. So if you stop learning, it's like if you start to fall behind, because CPD does not always have to mean some like massive training or formal event. It can be webinars, it can be YouTube videos, training sessions, technical guidance, any kind of software learning, site experience, or structured reflection on real projects. Good professionals keep learning all the time, and in landscape architecture, that is essential. Rule 8. Rule 8 is about aiming to deliver. Aiming to deliver the safest, highest quality service possible in terms of the public interest and in line with legal requirements. This one is one of the biggest rules because it pulls a lot of things together. It puts safety, it puts quality, responsibility, public impact, and in practice, this could affect things like levels, drainage, historic assets, material performance, buildability, durability, and whether the design actually is functional and it actually works in real life. And this rule is a reminder that our job is not only to satisfy a brief in a narrow way, we also have a wider public responsibility. Sometimes that means raising concerns, challenging weak decisions, or pushing for a better and safer outcome. This is part of professional judgment. And that's it, let's go to rule number 9. So the ninth rule. The ninth rule is about having an appropriate process to deal with complaints, promptly and effectively. Now, nobody loves thinking about complaints, but this rule is really about maturity and accountability, because the question is not whether everything is always perfect. The real question is, what happens when something goes wrong? And believe me, many things goes wrong. A clear complaint process shows that your business is organized, that your business is fair, and it's also prepared to deal with issues in a professional way. And often, having that process in place can stop a small problem in becoming something much more bigger. And that said, let's go to rule number 10, the 10th rule. The 10th rule is about avoiding conflict of interest. Of course, where possible, and declaring and managing them properly. If something arises, at the end of the day, this one comes down to trust. If your judgment can be influenced, or even appear to be influenced, that needs to be handled properly. That could involve personal interest, financial interests, overlapping client interests, or situations where you impartially might reasonably be questioned. Even if your intentions are good, undeclared conflicts can damage trust very quickly. So the professional approach is simple. Identify it, declare it, and just manage it properly as much as you can, because trust depends heavily on transparency. And that's it, let's go to rule number 11. Act with integrity. This is probably the biggest of all of them, because integrity is really the thread of running through every other rule in this list. It means being honest, it means being fair, trustworthy, but the most important thing, to be reasonable and saying what it's true, even when it's inconvenient for yourself. So you can know all the rules in theory, but if you do not act with integrity, none of the rest really means a lot. And in practice, integrity shows up in simple moments. Because being honest about an error, not overclaiming your role, giving proper credit, managing expectations clearly, and refusing to cut corners when it matters. This is the kind of thing that really defines a professional. So if we zoom out, these 11 rules are not just a checklist. This describes what a good practice professional will do in landscape architecture. And actually, it looks like they tell us to be sustainable, inclusive, competent, structured, insured, committed to learning, quality-driven, safe, accountable, transparent, and above all of this, honest. And honestly, that is a strong framework. Not just for Chartership, but for day-to-day practice as well. Because the best landscape professionals are not only creative, they are dependable, they understand that good design and good professional conduct goes together. So hopefully this video has made the Landscape Institute Code of Practice feel a lot more practical and a little bit less intimidating. You need to remember that this is only my perspective and how I look at things, but if you want to dive in properly, you're more than welcome to dive into the Landscape Institute website and search for the official document yourself. If you are working towards Chartership, starting your career, or just trying to build a stronger professional habits, these 11 rules are definitely worth understanding properly. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you had enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. And if you liked this video, consider subscribing for more videos on landscape design workflows and of course professional practice. Thanks for watching.